In this WrestleTalk news, a top star is suspended, Braun Strowman can't stop tweeting, Luke's review of Raw, and more.
Support WrestleTalk!
Well, this situation keeps getting more interesting, doesn't it? Ollie mentioned in yesterday's WrestleTalk news episode that NWA's Nick Aldis has quite publicly disparaged the company and stated he would not be re-signing his contract, which expires on December 31st of this year. Well, now there's much more to this situation, as NWA have responded by suspending Aldis. The company sent a press release to PW Insider that reads as follows. Pursuant to the recent comments made by Nick Aldis, the National Wrestling Alliance has suspended Aldis from the main roster, and effective immediately, Aldis will not appear for the Hard Times 3 pay-per-view and Revolution Rumble television tapings in New Orleans, Louisiana on November 12, 2022 and November 13, 2022. As such, the National Wrestling Alliance reserves its right to comment on this matter at a future date. How long he'll be suspended for and the nature of the suspension, such as if it will add time to Aldis' contract or if he is with or without pay, is currently unknown. But where did this all go wrong for Aldis and NWA? Aldis himself reportedly told Fightful Select that in the lead up to and following NWA's all-women's event Empower, he felt owner Billy Corgan disrespected his wife Mickie James, and this was a big factor in the relationship souring. Corgan recently made headlines again when he noted that he didn't believe there was enough depth of women, or that they couldn't work the NWA style to carry a pay-per-view, which is why they weren't doing another Empower event. Fightful Select reports that several women who regularly appear for NWA were also disrespected by these comments, so it stands to reason that this sentiment was a factor for Aldis. Aldis reportedly noted that he and Mickie James had not spoken about this publicly beforehand due to Aldis being a top name in the promotion. Fightful Select also clarified that they'd heard that this is not a work, and the situation had been brewing for quite some time. After we covered Braun Strowman's Twitter tirade? Joking spree? Whatever it was that he was doing on yesterday's WrestleTalk news, turns out he's tweeted some more. After several wrestlers took issue with his statements and publicly went back and forth with him, it seemed the Twitter had been taken away from Strowman, but apparently not, as he has once again stirred up feelings by tweeting out a video clip of him doing a backflip off a trampoline with the caption, "How many stars? Hashtag am I doing this right? Hashtag heat magnet. Hashtag troll killer, hashtag flippy floppy, hashtag do y'all like me now." Heat magnet Braun Strowman. What a babyface. And speaking of controversy, WWE's trips to Saudi Arabia haven't exactly been smooth sailing in the past, with fans and some wrestlers not being on board with the shows in the first place, as well as one infamous event where WWE stars were seemingly stranded and unable to leave the country on their flight home. Crown Jewel 2022 had its fair share of uncertainty going into it as well, with reported threat of attacks from Iran on the horizon. Aside from that, Fightful Select is reporting that several they spoke to about the event felt it was one of the easier trips to and from Saudi, which is nice. On top of this, it seems to have performed rather well as well, as according to Fightful Select, an internal WWE memo to executives noted that it surpassed Clash at the Castle to become the most viewed international premium live event of all time. The viewership was reportedly in the 7 figures in the US on Peacock, which, if you're not too hot on numbers, is a whole bunch. If you're enjoying this episode of the WrestleTalk News, make sure to subscribe and like the video if you haven't already, because we upload a new episode every day, and subscribing is the best way to keep up to date with everything happening in the wrestling world. Now, hot tag to Luke.
Thank you for your support on Patreon. He ran, Aaron Hanaran, and the roller coaster, Robert Acosta. Get your own Patreon shout out over at patreon.com/WrestleTalk. And now it's time for my review of Monday Night Raw, aka wow, this crowd really didn't react to anything all night edition of Monday Night Raw in about 5 minutes. I was having a chat with Ollie last week about AEW Dynamite. You know, last week's show, which was a really wacky one with Tony Khan throwing various things at the wall and hoping something would stick. And while the internet didn't really like that episode, Ollie loved it and I quite enjoyed it. And Ollie made this really interesting point that since Triple H has taken over WWE Creative, we rarely get those wrestling shows anymore where loads of mad things happen in the hope that a storyline will gain some sort of momentum or it'll pop a rating or something. And going by the reaction online to this episode of Raw, I might be in the minority by saying that I kind of loved it. Did it make sense? No, not really. But was I sports entertained? Yeah, I sort of was, actually. The show kicked off in fabulous fashion with the Usos and New Day jaw-jacking over who had their road to the top tougher, like boomers in the Northwest arguing with their friends about who had the harder upbringing. New Day pointed out that the Usos were born into this business and were handed their opportunities in WWE, while they had to sit in catering hoping not to get fired, and had to start YouTube channels to make a name for themselves outside of WWE in the hope that someone in the office would notice them. The Usos responded to that by saying that New Day didn't want the pressures they had, wrestling under Rikishi, Yokozuna, the Head Shrinkers, and the rest of the Anoa'i dynasty. It was a brilliant segment, slightly ruined by Matt Riddle, but we'll get to that in a second, and it was a superb way to build their title match this Friday. But the problem, and this will be a running theme for tonight, is the crowd didn't react to anything they said. All four men, 5 if you include the silence of Solo Sikoa, gave excellent performances, but this crowd did not give a single flying fig. It's a real shame, and the crowd, I've got to be honest with you here, ruined a lot of really good segments with their lack of caring. I've been told online that the town they were in lost the World Series over the weekend, and they think that's why the crowd weren't really that alive. But if that is the case, that's very unfair to the men and women who busted their asses on this episode of Raw. So yeah, Matt Riddle interrupted New Day, which actually feels like a heel thing to do, and did some lame comedy in this serious segment about his bongos, just to make sure that we drive that joke further into the ground than it already was, and this set up a 6-man tag. The ends did not justify the means. The match itself was good and served 2 purposes. It built New Day versus the Usos for SmackDown and put Solo Sikoa over massively, who got the pin on Riddle. The right person to take the pinfall and the right person to get the win. And this was the first 40 minutes of the show. And it was all great except for the crowd. And I'll just say this now and one more time, this crowd sucked, because I don't want to sound like a broken record when reviewing the rest of the show, but this crowd did suck. Baron Corbin beat Cedric Alexander to further his push, and was totally worth it for JBL to bust out one of his laughably stupid tough guy phrases that he used during the invasion. Yum yum, come get you some. The f does that mean? Seth Rollins tried to defend his United States Championship in an open challenge, which was answered by the Judgment Day, presumably Finn Balor, but we never actually found out, because the OC came out and said that they couldn't find someone to be their Rhea Ripley solution, but a Rhea Ripley solution found them. Cue the return of Mia Yim to WWE, who took out Ripley, and the newest edition of the OC stood tall with her new friends. This was a very good segment and a cool return, and I'm so happy to see Yim getting this opportunity. They did do some bad comedy later on in the night, but this segment was really good. And it won't be the last time we see Seth Rollins tonight either. Otis can not only now read Stephen King books, but he can also win on TV by pinning Elias. Boy, that Elias push sure ended quick, didn't it? Bianca Belair and friends came out, and guess what? They brawled with Damage Control, which I've written in my notes for nearly every single week in various different combinations since Bayley returned at SummerSlam. Thankfully, it looks like this is all going to come to an end at Survivor Series, as the challenge was laid down for War Games. Nikki Cross joined Bayley's ranks, and it was announced later on that her team will have one more member, while Belair will need to find another 2. Presumably Candice LeRae and Dana Brooke, based on what happens later on, but not sure who the 5th woman of Damage Control will be. Let me know who you think it will be in the comments, Sasha Banks. Austin Theory ended his losing streak by beating Shelton Benjamin, and The Miz cut a promo before his match against Johnny Gargano by saying he's met with a Hollywood producer to make a movie about his storyline with Dexter Lumis, and he's been in touch with his lawyers about the fake claims that Gargano made last week. Gargano came out onto the stage and said the producer was actually a private investigator wearing a hidden camera who filmed The Miz admitting that Johnny Gargano was telling the truth last week. The loud of crowd reaction, apart from light what chance that Johnny got, made this awkward segment even more awkward. Thankfully, the two then had an excellent NXT-style match. Probably The Miz's best in-ring wrestling match since that great run he had in 2016, which, to make you all feel old, was 6 years ago. It was genuinely brilliant back and forth action, and a creative finish where Miz pretended to be pulled under the ring. He grabbed a turnbuckle crank, which he then hit Gargano with behind the referee's back to score the win. The storyline may suck massive balls, but the The match was far from balls. It was awesome. Dexter Lumis attacked The Miz after the match with a chair. But Mia Yim wasn't the only big return on this episode of Raw, as the 24/7 championship was defended by Dana Brooke against Nikki Cross, who won the belt in a heatless match. In a YouTube exclusive video, they showed that Nikki tried to throw the belt in the bin, but hilariously missed or just fell on the floor. And I guess that means that's the official end of the 24/7 title. Unless Hacksaw Jim Duggan finds it and claims it for himself. A joke for our older audience members. Which brings us to the main event. Seth Rollins' second attempt of the night to have an open challenge for his US title. Mustafa Ali initially responded, but he was beaten up by Bobby Lashley, who accepted himself. The match did not get started, however, as Lashley just killed Rollins around ringside and put him through the announcer table. Can't have a DQ if you don't officially start the match. And then, as security escorted him away, including your weekly Petey Williams spotting, Austin Theory came out and cashed in his Money in the Bank on a prone Seth Rollins. Right, so this makes little sense. I've always thought the idea of a wrestler cashing in Money in the Bank on anything other than the world title to be a bit silly. Because why wouldn't you want to cash in on the world champion? And it makes even less sense that Theory cashed in on Seth for the US title here tonight, because this was the second time that Rollins had issued an open challenge for the belt that anyone can accept. He could have just accepted the open challenge or done it on a different week and then kept his Money in the Bank to cash in on Roman. Look, you could make the argument that he's a smart because the champ was down and he's got more chance of beating a prone Seth than a prone Roman. But doesn't Austin Theory also think he's the best wrestler on the planet and can beat anyone? This feels less like a character move and more a way to get the Money in the Bank briefcase off of him, because it was an albatross around his neck holding his storylines back. This and the 24/7 title were the last remnants of the Vince era, and Trips killed them both in the span of 20 minutes. But that aside, this was an awesomely chaotic ending to the show, especially as Theory had the match won, but Lashley dragged him outside and killed him even more. Somehow the match wasn't called off, and Theory beat the 10 count to get back into the ring right into a stomp from Seth for him to retain. Theory joins John Cena, Damien Sandow, and Baron Corbin as unsuccessful Money in the Bank winners. So yeah, this was a mad show, but I was thoroughly sports entertained. Mia Yim returned, the 24/7 championship was killed, Austin Theory failed to cash in, we got a Miz Dad reference, yeah, the crowd sucked, I had a blast. This week's episode, it's probably not 5 out of 5, but it's certainly a 4 out of 5.
In this WrestleTalk news, backstage heat on Braun Strowman, Nick Aldis publicly quits the NWA, more WWE return news and more.